Hi, folks. Thanks for joining us. My name is James Michael Nichols. I use he, him pronouns, and I currently serve as the Director of Communications for Equality North Carolina. Today, I'm thrilled to come together with my colleagues at ENC, Campaign for Southern Equality, our out electeds and electeds for equality, and other community leaders to celebrate the introduction of 4 pro-equality bills. This package of legislation would move the needle forward on progress for LGBTQ folks and other marginalized communities across North Carolina and provide much needed protections for the most vulnerable North Carolinians. At the conclusion of our slate of speakers, we will take questions from the press. Since this press conference is over Zoom webinar, we ask that you use the raise your hand function. And once the question and answer period arrives, I will then call on press individually, and my colleagues will unmute you in order for you to direct your question towards one or all of our speakers. We're so happy that you're here with us. To open up this discussion, I'd like to invite the Executive Director of Equality North Carolina, Kendra Johnson, to provide some opening remarks. Kendra?
Hello, everyone, and good morning. My name is Kendra Johnson. I use she and her pronouns, and I have the honor and the privilege of serving as the Executive Director of Equality NC. Today, I am thrilled to be among so many visionary leaders of our movement and change makers here in North Carolina who are committed to fighting for LGBTQ equality, racial justice, and building a better state for us all. We live in difficult times for our communities in the background of the COVID-19 pandemic. And to add insult to injury, over the past several weeks, we've seen a targeted campaign of hate aimed at our transgender young people all across this country, including here in our home state of North Carolina. And on the eve of Transgender Day of Visibility, I want to say that we stand with the trans and non-binary community. We see you, you belong, and the movement for LGBTQ equality would not be a reality without your tireless efforts. In this moment in our country, these 4 bills introduced today by our incredible out-electeds and electeds for equality are nothing short of a breath of fresh air and a step towards correcting a legacy of anti-LGBTQ sentiment in North Carolina that is frankly known around the world. For too long, LGBTQ North Carolinians have lived under the shadow of archaic and outdated laws that impact everyone in our community, but most directly those of us that live at the intersections of multiple lenses of oppression. Black, brown, transgender, and gender nonconforming North Carolinians continue to suffer the greatest threats to life and safety under the legacy of House Bill 2, the lack of non-discrimination protections in the state, through the invocation of the so-called panic defense, and at the hands of those practicing conversion therapy. We must pass these 4 bills so North Carolina can not only catch up with the rest of America, but also begin to build a state that actively embraces the true diversity of the human experience. These 4 bills won't fix all of the problems and obstacles that our communities face, but they are a start, and they are reason to celebrate during the tough times that we are living in. Thank you for being with us today and for joining with us in this fight. We couldn't do it without you. Thank you.
Thanks, Kendra. Up next, we have Representative Vernona Alston of House District 29.
Good morning. Thank you, James. My name is Vernona Alston, and I represent District 29 here in the North Carolina House of Representatives. It's no secret that North Carolina has a difficult history when it comes to LGBTQ plus rights, but we're here to change that. Today, my colleagues and I filed House Bill 450, the Equality for All Act, and House Bill 451, the full repeal of HB 2 and HB 142. These bills extend non-discrimination protections in housing, in public accommodations, in schools, and employment to all LGBTQ plus North Carolinians. It affirms what we already know, that no one should live in fear of discrimination, and that everyone in North Carolina deserves basic human rights. This bill will protect the rights of LGBTQ workers, neighbors, students, and friends. With it, we acknowledge that LGBTQ people deserve safe communities to grow, to learn, and to thrive. And with this bill, we will ensure that everyone in our state has a fair chance to simply live their lives. North Carolina is ready for that. Across the state, our cities and towns, our friends and neighbors are fighting for comprehensive non-discrimination protection. In 7 of our local communities, we've already seen extensions of these protections, and more are on the way. But even with these impactful local policy changes, there are still gaps, areas where LGBTQ folks are not yet fully protected. And this is where we come in. Statewide non-discrimination is what we need now to work with our local communities and to do what the majority of North Carolinians want us to do, to treat everyone fairly, to protect human rights, to support and pass these important protections for North Carolina. No one should worry that they can't buy a home because of who they love, or be denied a haircut or a hotel room because of their gender identity. And I want to be able to go to a restaurant knowing that my right to be there with my family is protected by the state that I call home. We all deserve that kind of freedom. So I'm very proud to have filed these bills. I'm proud to stand with my colleagues and our community partners here today. And I'm eager to continue our work to bring comprehensive non-discrimination protection to everyone in North Carolina. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Alston. Up next, we have Cherry Icabozy, a community leader and East Fort Pottery employee.
Hey y'all, my name is Cherry Icabozy. I use they, or he, him pronouns, and I live in Asheville, North Carolina, where I work at East Fort Pottery. I remember when HB2 passed 5 years ago and a flood of news broke out about businesses pulling investments from North Carolina. Concerts were rerouted, conventions were canceled, and planned expansions were rolled back. The Associated Press estimated that the law would cost our state $3.76 billion in lost investments and revenue. These developments underline that HB2 and later HB 142 were not just bad for LGBTQ people and especially transgender people, they were also bad for our businesses. 5 years later, our economy is still missing out because LGBTQ people remain vulnerable to discrimination in North Carolina, lagging behind 20 other states that fully protect my community, including our neighbors in the north to Virginia, who passed comprehensive protections last year. And while it's great to see local communities passing non-discrimination ordinances, 93% of our state's residents live in municipalities without protections. I personally am proud to work at East Fort Pottery, where the company centers equity and compassion as our core values. As a transgender person, I have felt more respected in this workplace than I ever have. That is because of East Fort's strong commitment to finding more equitable ways to do business, an imperative that includes supporting LGBTQ causes. The company has a longtime partner of campaign for Southern Equality, and last year sponsored tens of thousands of dollars in grants to BIPC LGBT people, North Carolina, and across the South. I want every LGBTQ person to feel included and welcome and free from discrimination, not just in the workplace, but in every area of life. Your basic freedoms should not depend on where you live. Non-discrimination protections and this entire package of pro-LGBTQ bills will make North Carolina a stronger state, feel a better place to do business, and create more opportunities for LGBTQ people everywhere to thrive. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry. And I know for a lot of us, Sherry's audio might have been a little pixelated. So Adam and I from CSC will share Sherry's remarks with the press if they are interested in reading them themselves after the fact. But Sherry, we appreciate you being here. Next, we have Representative John Altrey from House District 100.
Thank you, James, and good morning, everyone. I am John Altrey, and I represent House District 100 here in the North Carolina House of Representatives. This morning, I'm proud to announce that along with Representatives Morey, Clemens, and Alston, I filed HB 459, banning gay panic defense in North Carolina. The gay panic defense strategy is a legal strategy that asks a jury to find that that's the victim's sexual orientation or gender identity expression is blamed for defendant's violent reaction, including murder. The trans panic defense is a closely related legal strategy applied in cases of assault, manslaughter, or even murder of transgender individuals with whom the assailant had engaged in sexual relations unaware that the victim is transgender. Producing in the attacker an alleged trans panic reaction, often a manifestation of their own homophobia and transphobia. HB 459 would ban this so-called gay trans panic defense, a defense that has historically been used to dismiss anti-LGBTQ violence and justify heat of passion results. The gay trans panic defense is an abhorrent legal loophole that allows folks to attack, harm, or even murder someone based on their own personal homophobia or transphobia. Now, these defenses are based on irrational fears and prejudices towards LGBTQ people. And they imply that violence against LGBTQ plus people is acceptable or understandable under certain conditions. 12 states have already banned the use of the gay trans panic defense, including most recently our neighbors to the north, Virginia. Now, this defense actually puts the victim on trial, not the offender, and it should be prohibited. By banning this defense, we send a message that someone's existence as an LGBTQ plus person does not excuse anyone from committing a heat of passion attack. I look forward to your questions, and I look forward to the passage of this bill. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Representative Altrey. Up next, we have Representative Allison Dahl from NC House District 11.
Thank you, everybody, and thank you, Equality NC, for putting this all together. Again, my name is Representative Allison Dahl, and my pronouns are she and her. I am, along with Representative Fisher, Butler, and Harrison, we are introducing the Mental Health Protection Act, but it is banning conversion therapy. I have a personal attachment to this. Unfortunately, one of my aunts went through conversion therapy, and still to this day, she's in her late 70s, and still to this day, there are ramifications from said therapy. And so it's really important to me that we make sure that no child has to go through any of this, that no person has to go through this. If you're not aware, conversion therapy is also referred to as reparative therapy. It's the practice of attempting to change an individual's sexual orientation or gender identity. And we need to leave this way back where it was in the past and not even utilize this type of therapy, as it has no basis or good methods in it. So I am very proud, along with, we also have a Senate bill. Hold on, I wrote down my notes where it was, and now I've lost my notes. Natasha, what number is it? I can't believe it. Oh,
It is Senate Bill 392, and our sponsors are myself, Natasha Marcus, Senator Jay Chaudhary, and Senator Natalie Murdoch. Thanks for the shout out, Allison. I appreciate it.
so this is really important that we have it in the House and in the Senate. But I'm very sad to have to introduce a bill such as this, but I'm very proud of the hard work of Representative Fisher, Representative Butler, and Representative Harrison on this bill. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Representative Dahl. Up next, we have Reverend Ray McKinnon, a Charlotte community faith leader.
Good morning. As was just said, my name is Ray McKinnon, and I use he, him pronouns. I live here in Charlotte with my wife, Kelly, and 3 of our 4 sons. I'm a proud Christian minister who strongly supports inclusion and equality for all LGBTQ plus people. I want to shout out my senator who's on here, Senator Natasha Marcus, and my friend John Altrey. Thank you for your support. I want to create a space where all of my neighbors, including those who are LGBTQ plus, are welcomed in every space with open arms. And that's why I'm feeling so hopeful today about the introduction of this slate of bills that I believe will move North Carolina into being a more positive, affirming, a more loving, a more just, and a more merciful space. As a state, we have been on a long journey. And in the 5 years since the passage of HB 2 and nearly 10 years since Amendment 1, I know so many North Carolinians who have opened their hearts and their minds and their arms and lengthened the table, increased the circle of our LGBTQ plus siblings. I know this to be true because it's a journey that I found myself on when it comes to LGBTQ folks. You know, for years I was either apathetic to the life of my LGBTQ plus siblings, or I just didn't even, worse than being apathetic, I just allowed my ignorance to hold me up. See, I grew up missionary Baptist, and I didn't look too far beyond the scripture as it was presented to me. But then I grew up, I started asking tough questions. I was trained theologically, and now I know to be true what I should have always known, that every one of my neighbors deserves to be loved, deserves to be invited in. Every one of my neighbors deserves to have the protections under the law that this slate of bills deserve, and I'm so excited about that. Because I have been on this journey to do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly, and this slate of bills does just that. It tells my siblings who are LGBTQ plus, we see you, we know you, we love you, and we're not going to allow folks to hurt you. So now is the time for North Carolina to take this other big step on our evolutionary journey toward justice for all. And so I pray that we come together and we close this ugly chapter of HB 2 and HB 142 and build a state where no one is excluded or discriminated against because of who they are, because of who they love, and because of their ability to be real, to be honest, to be full of who they are. So I accept these bills, and I am so excited about their passage. Thank you. Hope they pass.
Thank you so much, Ray. We really appreciate you. I want to toss it to our partner, Allison Scott, Campaign for Southern Equality's Director of Impact and Innovation, to wrap up the speaker portion of this press conference.
Thank you, James. Good morning. My name is Allison Scott. I use she and her pronouns, and I'm the Director of Impact and Innovation at the Campaign for Southern Equality. I'm a lifelong North Carolinian. I love my state, and every day I wake up excited to go to work to try and make it a better and more welcoming place for LGBTQ people. It's been a traumatic few years for transgender people, such as myself. 5 years ago, the NCGA passed the extreme and reckless HB2, vilifying transgender people and singling us out for discrimination. The Trump administration waged an all-out assault on trans folks, and just this year, dozens of states are pushing bills that specifically target transgender youth for exclusion with access to health care and in sports, with many of these bills becoming law in southern states, including Tennessee, Mississippi, and Arkansas. It was never about bathrooms. These laws are hateful, but they do not define us. And more than anything, we are committed to standing alongside trans youth and making sure that they know they are not alone. This morning, I'm honored to be telling a different story about LGBTQ life in the South. Lawmakers in North Carolina are introducing a package of bills pushing for LGBTQ equality across our state. The bills confront the attempted erasure of LGBTQ minors by prohibiting so-called conversion therapy, establishing statewide non-discrimination protections, and a full repeal of HB2 and 142. The legislation will be especially impactful for the BIPOC community who face disproportionate harm and discrimination. These bills will catch our laws up to where we really are as a state. A supermajority of North Carolinians support non-discrimination laws, and an even greater percentage supports protecting minors from conversion therapy. Communities across North Carolina are uniting to pass local non-discrimination ordinances. Trans students will now be affirmed with their actual names in schools. North Carolina is ready to embrace and include LGBTQ people in every area of life. 5 years ago, North Carolina became infamous for passing an invasive and discriminatory law that was more representative of the relics from our past. This year, we have the opportunity to blaze a better path, a more hopeful and inclusive path, one that points toward a more equitable future in our state. It's time to create a new reputation as a state where we admit our mistakes, open our minds, and move forward. It's time to pass these laws, and it's time to take action. Thank you.
Thank you, Allison. We will now move to the Q&A portion of our press conference. So again, press, please raise your hand. I will call on you and my colleagues will unmute you. And when you're speaking, if you could please state your name, the outlet you're with, and who your question is directed toward. So let's start with Brian Anderson.
Hi, thank you guys so much. I appreciate it. Brian Anderson here on behalf of the Associated Press based in Raleigh, North Carolina for me. Had a question just for any of the lawmakers, and then had a question for Equality NC's executive director. First for Equality NC's director, what's different from the 2019 package? I know you all are calling for the full repeal of HB2 and conversion therapy has been discussed before, but what's different from previous legislation? And for any of the lawmakers, what would you say is the likelihood of this advancing in a GOP-controlled legislature and ultimately getting to the governor? Thank you.
Yeah, what's different in this package of bills is, number one, there are four instead of three. So the gay trans panic bill is a new addition to this package. Secondly, the full repeal of HB2 and HB 142 has been modified ever so slightly because of the recent sunset of one prong of HB 142 on December 1st, 2020. Within the Mental Health Protection Act, there have been some updates to ponder vulnerable adults. There's been some change in the language and it's also a bit more concise in terms of some of the preamble language, essentially. So the bills have slight revisions to reflect the current moment, but the essentially the intent and the purpose of the bills remain the same.
And this is Representative Alston, and I'd certainly love to hear from my colleagues as well on the second question, Brian, but I won't venture to speculate too far, but, I'll say first off, I hope that there is appetite and an eagerness to take advantage of the opportunity to pass these bills. As we mentioned, public opinion around extending statewide non-discrimination protections is growing. People want this change to happen. As I mentioned, we're seeing these changes take place locally across the state. We're seeing great momentum at the federal level for comprehensive non-discrimination protections. And so I think now is our time. And, again, I want to hope that folks in the majority here would take us up on this opportunity, because we think it's something that everyone should get behind, but time will tell. I think we're excited about this week, and look forward to building on it. And again, I'll open things to my colleagues if they'd like to add anything about other specific bills. Thank you, Brian.
Brian, this is Representative Susan Fisher in Asheville. I just want to call to folks' attention that even though we see these bills come back and back session after session, that's what happens in the legislature. It's very rarely that in the first round of introductions of bills that you see a bill pass. I think the difference this year is that we have more statistical knowledge of the voters. We know, for example, that 80% of polled respondents immediately state they think conversion therapy or reparative therapy is wrong. And we also know that it's a kind of therapy that's been debunked scientifically. 26 states in the District of Columbia have passed laws protecting minors from conversion therapy. And this bill in particular seeks to protect adults who are incapable of giving consent for things like a therapy like conversion therapy or reparative therapy. So it's every year that we do this, I believe that we make more progress toward passage, and it's important to keep this in front of people. So that's, we will see. I continue to have a hope that we will see passage of these bills. Thank you for the question.
If I could just add, in addition to what my colleagues have stated, I believe that Republican members care about human rights. And I believe that Republican members want to protect young adults from mental health abuse and from suicide. And since I believe that is true, I think that they will support our bill. In my case, I'm a sponsor of the Mental Health Protection Act. And one of the reasons I am is because we know that conversion therapy causes a lifetime of harm and often results in teen suicide. We can't allow that to happen in North Carolina. And so I believe that regardless of party, we can come together to protect our kids. They're all our kids, and we need to do that together without regard for party allegiance.
I'd like to add too that I think when we talk about this package of bills, a couple of them are similar, but I think there's more of a need now. We've seen that there is a coordinated attack across multiple states, and there's a greater need now than there was 2 years ago. And North Carolina would be just one of many states to step up and do this. It wouldn't even be leading the pack. We're just asking North Carolina to join the pack.
Thank you all so much. Next, we will go to Joe Killian.
Hello, this is Joe Killian from NC Policy Watch. I have a question specifically for Kendra Johnson, but really for anybody who'd like to speak to it. House Bill 358, the Save Women's Sports Act, would create a standard for determining how transgender people could participate in sporting teams at the high school and at the college level, really at all the public school levels, that would be in contrast, in direct contradiction to some of the policies by groups like the NCAA and other bodies that regulate sport. For that reason, are you hopeful that you'll see some of these large organizations come out against the bill or join with you in opposition to it?
The bill that you referenced, Save Women's Sports, is an egregious attack on trans youth, and it demonstrates fully the need for the measures that are being presented today by our out electeds and our electeds for equality. With regard to that bill, I'm hoping that we will not see that bill advance because the psychological harm that it does, that occurs for the trans community and the community at large is devastating. And we'll be working with our colleagues to defeat it.
Joe, do you have a follow-up or are you good? All right, I'm gonna pass it to Julia Hayward.
Hi everyone, this is Julia Hayward. I'm reporting from Assembly. I wanted to know how many Democrats.
Julia, we're having trouble hearing you. If you could adjust perhaps your microphone or headphones.
Can you all hear me better now?
Yes.
Awesome, sorry about that. This is Julia Hayward from the Assembly. I wanted to know how many Democrats are part of this.
No, Julia, I'm sorry. We still can't. It's going in and out now.
I'm just gonna write my question in the chat. Sorry about that.
If you want to write it in the chat, I'm happy to read it out loud for you if that's easier.
Will do.
While we wait on that, let's pass it to Danielle Badagila. I'm sorry if I mispronounced your last name.
It's okay, everybody mispronounces it. Thanks for taking my question. This is Danielle Battaglia with the News and Observer. And I was curious, kind of piggybacking on Brian's question a little bit for the lawmakers, if any of the Republican lawmakers have been asked to sign on to this bill or these bills, and if so, what was the response?
I'll speak for this is Representative Alston again, and again, we're going to invite my colleagues to chime in as well. On the House side, at least, we are, I think, very fortunate to have 5 out electeds in the chamber, as well as you see here, just so many wonderful allies, and so we work together to put together this package of bills and. We look forward now. Our colleagues on both sides of the aisle have an opportunity to join in to co-sponsor the bill, and so hopefully that will happen, and hopefully it'll happen in large number.
Danielle, do you have a follow-up?
That was it. Thank you.
Julia Hayward's question in the chat is how many Democrats in total are a part of this new package of bills and how many sponsors are there? Someone wants to take that.
Really quickly, in the Senate, the Equality for All Act should be going public in a little bit. I've been clicking away and refreshing, waiting on that Senate bill number. But in the Senate, we have 3 primary sponsors, one of which is on Senator Natasha Marcus, as well as Senator Wiley Nickel are the primary sponsors for the Equality for All in the Senate. We do anticipate having a very broad support for that bill. And for the conversion therapy ban, Senator Marcus is the primary sponsor there. I'm one of the other sponsors along with Senator Jay Chaudhry. So 3 and 3. And again, we anticipate having a lot of support for both of those bills.
Try to answer that even more directly, maybe Ms. Hayward, what you're getting at is, I think we have the maximum number of primary sponsors on each of the bills, both in the House and the Senate, and they are just now live and seeking co-sponsorship. So we don't know the answer to your question until the window closes for when co-sponsors can sign on. I hope we'll have people from both parties. I hope we'll have a whole lot of co-sponsors on all of these bills, and we'll wait and see as people decide to join us in our fight for equality here in North Carolina.
Do we have any more questions from the press? I don't see any more hands raised. Brian Anderson, I think has a follow-up.
Yes, I was just curious about the athletics bill. You kind of touched on the national trend. I was just sort of hoping you could put that effort by Republicans in a broader national context and sort of explain the reasoning for the opposition to it as well.
Is the question directed to me?
Sure, that would be great. Thanks, Kendra. Sorry.
Yeah, and so can you repeat the last bit of your question?
Could you just sort of describe the group's reasoning for opposing the measure and sort of put it in a national context? I know you sort of referenced some other states that had been doing this, but I was just sort of hoping you could explain why this issue is important to y'all, not just in North Carolina, but taking place nationally, and why y'all are opposed to it.
Yeah, so right now we have over 80 bills across the nation that are focused on denying trans youth healthcare, denying trans youth access to sports, and denying, in my own original home state, we just had one of the most egregious bills that would deny just basic healthcare to transgender individuals, but the LGBTQ community at large, based on someone's moral conscience. We stand against it because it's wrong. Everyone should have access to healthcare. Everyone should have access to free and equal education and enjoy sports programs. Everyone should have access to jobs, employment, etc. These measures stand in direct contradiction to the package of measures that were introduced today. If we believe in the dignity and worth of every individual who is part of this country, then we don't create bans that exclude people from access to basic human rights generically. And so that's why we stand in opposition. In parallel, when we have these measures, and I alluded to this before, whether they're passed or not, the psychological harm that is created, particularly for youth, is lifelong. We already have exorbitant numbers of LGBTQ suicides, and that number is particularly high for transgender individuals. We already have many issues with low access to healthcare because of discrimination. Creating these measures that gives people a license to discriminate further marginalizes one of the most vulnerable communities that are part of the LGBTQ plus community. We stand in opposition simply because it's wrong.
Kendra, I'd like to chime in on that. Allison Scott from CSE. These sports bills that was filed here in North Carolina, just like other states, they are trying to manufacture a problem. North Carolina has many student athletes who are trans or non-binary with zero incidents of issues. These kind of bills are dehumanizing. They are not about sports, just like HB2 was not about bathrooms. It's about trying to erase trans youth and trans people from public. All of these things are based in faulty science. And more importantly, they are playing to fears about trans people coming into a sphere of life and being successful. Quit trying to push us aside. Let us have access to the same things as everyone else. That's what it should really be about. When these bills pop up, we see the rates of suicide hotlines, we see the rates of therapy, everything goes through the roof. These bills do harm immediately. Pushing these kind of bills is representative of a very small group of people. We know that people in North Carolina are overwhelmingly in support of LGBTQ people and trans people.
This is Representative Altrey from House District 100, and I just need to say that, a transgender girl is not a boy. And the emails that I am receiving portraying that there is some conspiracy of transgender youth to assume an identity that they were not born with, to cheat at sports, is just ludicrous. And I can't find the words that can express my, well, I guess disgust is one of them. But for me, it's a personal issue. I have family members who are in the LGBTQ community, including a grandchild who identifies as female and is transitioning. Now, I would do anything to protect any of my children and my grandchildren. And that is one of the reasons I am so supportive of these measures here today. Thank you.
Thank you, folks, and thank you, Brian. Do we have any more questions from the press? Please raise your hand if so. We have Ann Wyatt Little. If they could be unmuted, please.
Hi, this is Ann Wyatt Little with Fox 46 in Charlotte. This question is just for any of the lawmakers. How soon do you all hope to get these bills in front of a committee for a hearing?
This afternoon? Would that be soon enough?
Allison Dahl, they have to be read in first. So we do have some things that have to happen first. They have to go to the House and the Senate floor and be read in, or whatever that process is, and then they'll be assigned to committees. So, but I agree with John Autry. Oops.
All right, thank you, Representative Autry and Dahl. Anyone else have questions from the press? Julia Hayward is asking in the chat, do we have a number for that fourth bill? Julia, I'll send you that after the call. We appreciate all of you for being here today. I'm dropping my email in addition to Adam Pulaski, who is CSC's communications director, in the chat. Please follow up with us if you have additional questions. We'd be happy to connect you with folks for interviews or answer any clarifying thoughts. But this has been great, and we appreciate all of you coming out today. Thank you.
Thank you all.